Welcome to Washougal City Hall. Welcome to our first town hall meeting, our first Saturday town hall meeting. We will actually be holding these 4 times throughout the year, hopefully close to a quarterly basis on different topics and just general topics out there as well. One of those we've set aside for being a town hall meeting on just the entire city budget as well. So in advance of its deliberations and approvals and that type of thing. So hopefully these will prove to be helpful for everybody along the way. Today's session is on transportation. We're going to go through a couple of different portions of it. The first portion is going to be on our general transportation plans, our upcoming projects, things that we've got on the list to do. Dave Scott, our city administrator, is going to make that presentation. Unfortunately, when we scheduled this meeting, we didn't realize that our 2 public works directors and assistant director were scheduled to be gone today, both of them. So I think Dave will be able to field the presentation very well. The second portion of it will be on the Columbia River Crossing project. We've got a couple of different folks here that are going to do presentations, one about the project, another one in regards to opposition to the project. And then a third part, once we get through everything, we'll leave some time for any general issues that folks may want to talk about. If you have not yet, if you would like to speak today, and you have not yet, there are comment cards out in the hallway. Should be some pens out there as well. If you could make sure and fill those out, hand them in to Dave or Teresa up here at the front. They'll go through and do an address check and business check, that kind of thing, to make sure that we've got them from folks within the community. So one of the things I want to remind folks, and I know we want to do this in a little bit more relaxed manner, but I want to make sure that everybody understands we do still have rules of how we operate meetings. One of the first ones, just a courtesy, if you would, turn your cell phones to vibrate, silent, something, just so we don't have them out there chirping and going for anybody that's trying to find you on this beautiful morning. Second one is I do adhere to a standard of decorum within the room. So even though this is a town hall, even though it's relaxed, these are our city council chambers, and I consider them that no matter what, anytime we've got a meeting in here. So I have, I believe, only once or twice used a gavel in 3+ years, but if I need to use it, I will as well. So we do have a timer that's up here. And for the presenters that are doing their presentations during the CRC, we've set aside a 10-minute time period for each of those presentations to happen. So timers will be set. I think it goes off, it's green at 8 minutes, yellow at 9 minutes, and when 10 minutes hits, it starts flashing yellow at you. For general comments from the public and questions, we've got it at a 3-minute time limit. So at 2 minutes it starts flashing green, 2 minutes and 30 seconds yellow, and you've got 30 seconds to finish, and at 3 minutes it'll start flashing red. So that's what this little thing is up here as you go through. Yes, Connie Jo.
People that arrive after that announcement of the yellow sheet.
I'm going to continue making the announcement as we go from part to part. So.
Posted at the door or something, I don't know. You know.
So with that, we're going to start. Dave, do you want to take the first presentation on general transportation topics?
One question on format. We discussed the issue of whether non-residents could speak if there was time after residents had all been given a chance to speak. I want to be clear that I'm supportive of that. I know that there's been some disagreement on that. I would be curious what my other council colleagues think about letting non-residents speak. After all, Washougal residents have been allowed to speak.
Already resolved.
Really?
Yes. The mayor and I just had that discussion beforehand, and if I understood you correctly, you'd be happy to allow that after all the Washougal folks have exhausted their thoughts.
No, what I said was once we get done with the meeting, again, my understanding from the council meeting when this was brought up was that you all wanted to hear from your constituents. Folks that live in the community.
I never said that, but I would have said
Okay.
Whether the other council members.
First, we concluded we would hear from them first, but if we have more time, I agree with Councilman Boger.
My name
I
tag is
still
in front.
can't get all that out. That we would invite people to share their thoughts if they're from out of town, if we have time. Other folks?
Other council members?
In favor of it.
You don't have a way to take a vote. This is not a meeting, so it's a town hall meeting. That's why we tried to bring those questions up. Sorry about this, folks. We're gonna have a little technical timeout for a moment.
Look for a sense of the council.
That's fine, absolutely fine. Well, if we have time, that's, I think we have a lot on our plate today, so I'm not sure we will have time. I would like to hear from everyone who came out today, if possible, especially citizens.
I always prefer to hear from the residents of Washougal. That's what I feel I was elected to represent, and that's
Folks,
why I'm here.
folks, if you've got other conversations, if you could take them into the foyer. You're welcome to have other conversations. And I apologize. One of the things that most of you will never know unless you stand right about in here, because it's an oval room, the acoustics are weird. Sometimes you won't be able to hear us, but we literally will hear everything in the room. So that's also a warning, just so you know. Whispered conversations, it's almost like the hall of whatever it is in the Capitol. Everything in one spot you can hear.
Everybody speak up a little bit there.
Yeah, we're going to pass the microphone around as well. Karen? You here?
I would, yeah, Washougal residents first, but I don't mind hearing from others as well, so.
Okay, Dave, do you want to go ahead and start with our transportation updates?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not sure if we programmed that for the 10-minute thing.
It is.
It is? Okay.
I'm better than that.
Perfect. Well, good morning. I have a presentation that will look at our transportation facilities plans, projects that we're working on right now, some other initiatives that are kind of in the mix. The order of our presentation will be, we'll look at our recent financial history, very, very high level, focus particularly on our street maintenance efforts, which are born out of our real estate excise tax, the second quarter percent. We commonly call that REIT 2. And then also our transportation impact fee fund. We'll briefly go over that, look at our capital facilities plan efforts around transportation, give updates and status of projects, and then a couple of other initiatives that we're working on. So this just gives you a look at the level of funding that we have in our community for street maintenance. As you know, we have a street budget which pays all of our operating expenses for personnel and equipment and supplies, but the actual crack sealing, overlays, chip seals, pavement restorations, those types of projects that we have for ongoing maintenance of our street system is funded almost exclusively out of this identified funding stream. And you can see that it's a very modest level of funding that we have right now, and I think it's an unsustainable level of funding if you think about the condition of our streets and what we need just to keep them maintained over time. We brought this back to 2008 just to show what we believe was the height of the funding out of the REIT, and you might imagine that that level of funding out of the REIT was correlated to the level of activity that was generating REIT funds, lots of real estate transaction, new construction especially, but also just a very active real estate market.
With recovery of the real estate market, would we expect that funding to be a little higher?
I would expect it to be a little higher. We are seeing some signs of recovery. We have more activity at our permit counter. Anecdotal evidence from some realtors and others that are in the industry that the market's picking up. So I think that is positive news for us. Whether we would see that at the level that you see in 2008, I think you'll all recall the kind of levels of activity we had back then. I'm not sure if we could see that. And the point of showing this, I think, is that we are not using our general fund dollars, if you would, our operational general fund dollars to pay for street maintenance. We've identified this, and this is what this is statutorily set up to do. We could use it for other types of O&M, but this city has targeted this. So it's a market-driven funding source for something which is an ongoing, steady state, if you would, need in the community. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between the source of funding that we have, its volatility as a function of the market, and therefore what we're able to do. So that gives a little bit of history. I think this is just the stark reality of what all communities are facing, and the state has provided this type of funding as one of the types of fundings that we have for that. This is our TIF thing, so the title's wrong on there, my apologies. We do not have much transportation impact fee money left. We had quite a bit of transportation impact fee money, but we did some extensive capital work that leveraged almost all of our TIF dollars. You can see very modest. At the end of last year, we had $107,000. We're estimating $67,000 this year, and that'll give us $174,000 at the end of this year. We do not have any specific projects targeted where we'll be leveraging our TIF in 2013. This is also a market-dependent source of funding. New development pays traffic impact fees. That's the only source of that revenue. It comes from any new development that we have. There's somewhat of a dilemma when we talk about TIF, and a little bit later in the presentation we'll talk more about TIF, but TIF and other sorts of fees that we exact from new development comes up in conversations about economic development and wanting to be competitive regionally and nationally as companies and businesses look to site or to expand. We're very bullish here in Washougal and in the region to be very competitive, and this is one of the areas where we try to do that. It's kind of a double-edged sword for us, though, because the way that the system works to get funding to pay for very expensive transportation projects, we go out and get grants from the federal and state government, or we get appropriations from the federal and state government to do those projects. And to be competitive in the funding system, you need to bring matching dollars, and they tell you that you need a certain amount of that to be private dollars. Really, the only source of the private dollars that's identified right now is the TIF. So if in the name of economic development you truncate your TIF revenues in order to entice businesses to come, you'll have less TIF dollars to be competitive to take care of your significant transportation needs. So finding that balance point where you're competitive in terms of economic development, but also able to meet the needs of the community around transportation, that's the real policy choice that governing bodies face at the local level. We'll talk more about that and kind of put a face on that a little bit later when we look at the kind of dollars we're talking about for our transportation plan. As you know, we have a transportation capital facilities plan. This is not intended to give you a detailed exactly where things are, but an overview of what we're doing. These maps are not able to be produced at super detail, although I could probably. No, I can't. We are working on updating our transportation capital facilities plan. It is a work in progress right now. We have an existing one. This will look familiar to many of you who have been on the council for a while. The brown lines are road improvements, and so you can see Highway 14, you can see the rest of East Street heading east, you can see Evergreen, you can see going up the hill at 32nd and around the corner, and then W Street. The red lines are traffic calming, so these are identified as areas where we need to make sure that folks are traveling at safe speeds. We need to calm traffic. And the dots are intersections. We will get into great detail on this with the council over time as we move the transportation capital facilities plan through. It is not a significant change, if you would, from the current plans that we have. However, we're required to update the plan on certain schedules, and so we're doing that. One of the key policy choices that'll be in front of you as we move forward with this is where to set your TIF rate, because that is one of the products of a transportation capital facilities plan, as it is for your utility plans. What are the rates that you charge as, for new development as they come in and their contribution to these projects? So those are the major and neighborhood roadway projects. Again, very high level. Similar type of map, all proposed. In addition to our major roadways, our transportation system needs to take care of all of us as we're walking around town or if we're riding around town. So these dotted lines identify areas where our sidewalk system's not up to par for pedestrians or anyone that's on a bike. So there's work that needs to be done in these areas too. These are some identified areas where those types of improvements would be beneficial to the community. You can see they're primarily arterial in nature to get folks around to the key parts of the community. We'll talk more about sidewalks in a little bit. So these are the primary components of our CFP. You have the major roadways and neighborhood roads, and then you have PED, pedestrian efforts. This is the big list of the plan. Again, it's not to show you every single line there and have a conversation about every project, but what it is intended to show you is we have a lot of needs in the community. There are lots of projects. They are major roadways or in orange, neighborhood roads in purple, and the bike PED projects in green. And you can tell, I hope, on the far right that there's a yes or a no in the cell in the far right column. If it says yes, it's a project that's eligible for TIF funding, so you can use TIF funding to get after that project. If it says no, it's not. And you'll have to believe me when I say that the total project costs in this plan at the bottom are $151 million. So for just Washougal and just these major projects and everything that was on these maps, a conservative engineer's estimate for those projects in today's dollars is $151 million. Of that, a little more than half is TIF eligible, about 90 million of it. Now, we will never have $90 million of TIF. That just means that those are the types of projects where TIF would be in the equation as we seek grant funds to go after those. So I think the point of showing you these things is we have an active and robust system. We have a lot of needs in the community around transportation, and the price tag is $151 million. We do not have $151 million. Our general fund budget is $10, $11 million. So as you know, and this is the case for most communities, the transportation needs, the capital needs for transportation are well in excess of their operating budgets. It's not something that can be funded typically out of a local-only stream of funding. And that's why we partner with higher levels of government where those programs are there to provide the funding. And we go after that and compete. And it's highly competitive, as you can imagine right now. But there's good news, because we are actively pursuing our projects, and we are doing some things, and we have been successful in the recent past in acquiring some of those grant dollars. And so here's a status of some of the projects that we're working on. One that you may have noticed on the map, but I'm sure you're familiar with, is out at 32nd and Evergreen. We have an intersection. We're reconstructing that intersection. It's a $1.5 million project. And you can see the funding split there, $928,000, so almost $1 million is a grant. Surface Transportation Program is what STP stands for, and about $500,000 of funding from the city. And that ultimately was taken from excess general fund reserves that were identified for this project because of its economic development influence. We have a Public Works Trust Fund loan pending. We are hoping that a good chunk of that $500,000 might come to us in the form of a very low interest Public Works Trust Fund loan, 1%, and then that 573 can be programmed for debt service, but it will also free up then some matching dollars so that we can go out and try to be competitive for other grants as opposed to tying that cash up completely. You can see the timing of that. We don't know what will happen with that. Right now, in the former governor's proposed budget, the money for that loan is below the line because they are, as I've made you aware, the Public Works Trust Fund program is in peril as the state seeks to close its budget gap. Potentially less than half of what's typically been available to us will be available. Fairly extensive project. It's at 30% design right now. We have to go through a myriad of permitting processes. We have to acquire right-of-way, and that will happen into next year. Once that's all done, then we'll be able to do final design, and we'll be constructing this 2 years from now in the spring of 2015. It gives you an idea of the kind of timelines that are involved in major transportation projects. They take quite a bit of time to do. These are conservative estimates around time. One of the reasons we may not get a piece of the shrinking Public Works Trust Fund pot this session is because of that start date in 2015. Will be more viable in future sessions for those Public Works Trust Fund dollars.
Dave, is there any update on what the legislature's doing with that? Public Works Trust Fund money?
The last update that I have comes from the chief staff person for the Public Works Board and from some members of our legislative delegation, and that is our delegation is bullish for our projects and is asserting our projects, as I'm sure other members of the legislature are in Olympia on behalf of their communities in their districts, and making sure that the chairs of the appropriate committees in each chamber are aware of our projects and the importance of our projects. But right now, where the line is relative to what the former governor proposed is still kind of a line from which all the conversations are based. And the sense is that there is a real risk that what's traditionally been a state partnership with local communities through the Public Works Trust Fund, job creating both short and long term, and investing in infrastructure, is at risk for one-time use to balance the budget. It's a very difficult chore at the state level, certainly, and it's understandable, but at the same time it's disappointing. So it's pretty dire, I think. I think there's a real risk that will get swept. Nonetheless, that will mean, in this particular case, we were already programmed. We have the money, the 573. That's why we were successful in the grant, and the council set that money aside in a special Transportation Capital Facilities Fund in order to do these types of projects. So that's very, very good. However, as we try to leverage, once that's used, it's gone. So we're trying to leverage that. If we can get 1% money for a good chunk of that 573, you can use that then for debt service, but still have a little bit left over to try to get some other projects done. So we try every avenue we can to stretch our limited local resources as far as we possibly can to get things done. So yes, if we are not successful, by the time we get to construction, I think using that 573 for design and permitting right-of-way is viable because it's not the lion's share of the project costs. Once we get to construction, though, that's when we'll eat up all of that. So if we could get a loan by then, that would be great.
And this, just so you know, this is just one project that we have on the list for the Public Works Trust Fund funding list that has been, I think,
we have two others.
one of them, an extremely large one, dealing with utilities for the plant. All of those are under the line, Dave?
No, we have 3 projects. Only one is transportation related, which is
Right.
this one. The other one is our wastewater treatment plant upgrade, $10 million. That's below the line right now. And then the one that's above the line is the decant facility for our stormwater utility, and we will certainly be very grateful to receive that loan, and it will be meaningful to the community, no doubt about it. And we appreciate any support that the legislature provides. But yes, we are not alone in this. Every community across the state uses the Public Works Trust Fund. It's a tried and true way for the state to invest in local economies through our infrastructure.
The unfortunate part for us is for a number of years, Washougal has not really tried to go after those dollars, so we weren't in funding queues for those. We finally make it with 3 significant projects. And it's the year in which the state is looking to sweep the money to solve their own problem.
So, yeah, this is sort of a real portrait of what that means on the ground. But again, I think it's important to note that our legislative delegation is keenly aware of the importance of these projects in the district here, and we're very grateful for their bullish support. Some other projects that we're working on, and this will help you kind of see all the different avenues that we explore to fund these projects. Out at 32nd and Addy, and then across the railroad there's a sidewalk project. It's a $300,000 project. $162,000 of that is community development block grant funds, which are federal funds that come through the county. This is from last year's process. And then our match was $138,000. And one of the reasons that I believe, other than the fact that this is the type of project that really fits what that program is seeking to accomplish, is why it scored well, but also the council stepping up and matching at the maximum percentage for maximum points, the $138,000 is a very significant reason why this project was successful and we're able to deliver this for the community. Part of that project also has a small grant, but nonetheless it helps, $20,000, and it's for dealing with the sidewalks that go over the rail line. And this project's basically online. There's the work in the railroad area is always interesting and challenging, but that's slated coming right up. So we're very thankful that this project is coming online. And if you, I'll show you a little bit later how this all ties in to kind of the master planning of our transportation system. Each of these little segments is strategic in why we're doing it. They're not all isolated necessarily. We're after lots of different opportunities, and we're not always successful. One that we were very bullish on, and we are on a list, it's just that the dollars are tight, and there are many, many, many worthy projects all across the region and all across the state. And when you see the list when it finally comes out, and you understand that and the difficulty in being competitive. A great program, the Safe Routes to School program, taking care of our children in our community, getting to and from school. Like many communities, we have needs in that area. Here are some of those specifically. $1.1 million out at 34th and J, and I'll have an image of that in a moment. And then over near Jemtegard, $600,000 project. We are not above the line for these. Early on in the process, program staff was very bullish with us, encouraging us to apply because these were very needy. But then when everything got into the hopper and all the scoring gets done, we end up where we ended up. So we will continue to have this out there, and we will, at every opportunity in the next cycle, we will continue to advance these projects. I will go through a couple of these and then switch over to another application that I can show you the images. Another project that we were very excited about, again, we're below the line. This was a project where really we didn't have to bring any matching dollars for a $3.2 million project. So there was really no scoring around it. We were encouraged to offer $10,000 of matching money, but none of the scoring was really around the match. So as you can imagine, lots of people were interested in this program, and it's a pedestrian and bicycle grant type program, and it was going to be out on Shepherd Road. And if you've ever driven or attempted to walk out there, see any swimming holes out there, it's a road that could be brought up to urban standards and be safer for our community. And so this project would have widened the road, done the sidewalks, the bike lanes, the lighting, the stormwater improvements, everything that would be required to be programmatic with this grant, and take that road to urban standards. I recall when we mentioned this to you as we were applying, we were all very excited about the project, and we had kind of an image of that. All the way from River Road to 3rd, so the entire corridor. We will continue to pursue this one, but we're below the line this time. A pending grant that we have is in this year's cycle of the Community Development Block Grant Program. It's sidewalks again, and I will show you the visual of this in just a moment. South side of I Street from Elizabeth Park to the River Road, H to F on the west side of River, and then segues over down E to 20th to get down to the railroad tracks south of E, so we can get people north of E, south of E more safely, and a little bit of a crossing there. And it's all part of a strategy to help folks in communities that are eligible get from key parts of the community, parks, to major corridors where there's a bus, and into our downtown. So there's a little economic development flavor to this one as well. You can see again that the city is stepping up significantly with matching dollars, $120,000 out of the $260,000 project, again from our Transportation Capital Facilities Fund that you established out of reserves. In fact, Monday morning, the policy board that advises the Board of County Commissioners will score and rank these projects. So I will know, we will know late Monday morning whether or not the recommendation of the policy board to the commissioners will be including this project or not. And as always, every year, and particularly over the last few cycles, the amount of money that's coming from the federal government to locals through this program is shrinking. There are many, many needs across the county and many worthy projects, and it's very difficult for the policy board to try to score and differentiate between an important sidewalk project in Ridgefield near a school, for example, versus this project, which is very important going down River Road, particularly that part, for safety. Very difficult process, but it's an excellent process, and a lot of good work gets done in the county through it. I am going to try to do this so I can show you visuals of these projects that I just went through.
Before you get to that, for any folks who have come in since we started, we will have opportunities for the public to make comment to council, ask questions. But we do that through one of these forms that are out in the hallway. If you would fill one out, bring it up here to the staff table. They'll make sure and process that through. It does have, and I didn't mention this the first time, it does have down at the bottom, if you'd like to speak on general transportation issues, what we're talking about now, on the CRC project, or on other issues just in general in the community. You could certainly mark all of those. It's not a mark one and you only get an opportunity once. So those are out in the hallway if you'd like to fill one out. Dave.
Thank you. We have a couple over here for when you get a chance. This is the intersection project at 32nd and Evergreen, a project that will be beginning construction in 2015, the one for which we're trying to leverage some Public Works Trust Fund dollars. You can see that one of the main purposes here is to provide for safe and effective turning for trucks. So there's an economic development component to this, and you can see that the intersection will widen, the radii at the corners will get larger, and it'll be safer and better. So we're really pleased with that project. This is, you can see the project area down there. This is 32nd and Addy. The sidewalk project's basically done. North is to the left on this particular slide, obviously, and you can see the segments where those sidewalks are located. Encourage you to go out and take a look at that project. The unsuccessful are here. This is 34th and J, and you can see an extensive connection down to D, all the way up, crosswalks at the boxes, and then some connectivity down J. And you can see the school areas here. There's the stadium. Very, very important for safety, and obviously eligible safe routes to school type of project. We're very hopeful that at some point we'll be able to be funded for that. And over near the middle school, another project that will enhance safety for children and anyone walking around there. And then the Shepherd project, the red stripe is the project. You can see it comes all the way from Washougal River Road to the west to 3rd. You see the sandy swimming hole there. So it's pretty extensive length, pretty good sized corridor, $3.2 million project to bring that whole corridor up to urban standards. I believe that was all that was on. Oh, we have, just kind of gives you a feel for what that would look like. That's the typical urban cross section that you would see for a corridor like that. And but again, that's still something that we're chasing. And then finally, the last one that I had talked about there was the current CDBG application. The red bars are general vicinity of where that's at. Took a while to focus, didn't it? You see that a little better. So the top segment there extends from the park area down I to River. Then you head south on River, and in that area there's already sidewalks where there is no project, and then it connects to a large section where there's no sidewalks. In fact, the other day when we were doing the bus tour with the policy board, there just happened to be a woman walking in the street right where we are proposing to put the sidewalks, and it was a great example of why we're doing this project. It didn't look safe. What's that? We had to swerve and dodge to avoid her. Yeah. And then there are sidewalks from that southerly segment to River, to E, and then down E, obviously, but a nice connection into more of the heart of the downtown at 20th. This project would get us to the tracks, but all of these things are works in progress and a piece at a time and a chunk at a time, because we just don't have the funds as a broader community countywide to do it.
I have a question about Shepherd Road. You were talking about the connectivity with sidewalks and bicycle lanes and street improvements, but you didn't talk about the additional parking that we're considering. Is that something that you can talk about?
Yes, I can pull that back up. I will try to remember precisely where we're doing that. This probably doesn't lend itself super well to that, but in the general vicinity of the sandy swimming hole, in a couple of locations, in a parks context, and with those dollars, we are enhancing safety for folks, particularly in those busy days in the summer when we all want to jump in the water. Which will be here soon. Today.
Hey. Oh, no, you said when we want to jump in the water.
Yeah. Go skiing this morning and swimming this afternoon. we are leasing private property at the corner of Shepherd. It's the northwest corner of Shepherd and 8th, which is the very, becomes a very steep concrete surfaced road that goes up the hill. And we're able to, for a very reasonable cost, working with that property owner, basically have a temporary parking lot, if you would, that covers us on those days. And if you drove by there this last summer, it definitely enhanced the safety. Nonetheless, you still have to cross the street, and you still have to walk along Shepherd a little bit, and it's just not as safe as it needs to be. But the parking areas are helping that because it keeps cars off of the street. That makes the problem even worse. And then further to the west, near the church, property acquisition and more of a little mini park with a parking lot, a little place for play, and also crossing to the south. But both of these are on the north side. The south side's pretty encumbered, but we will get there slowly but surely and make this make that safer. Okay, those were those projects. I am going to. Another project that we're working on, Highway 14. This is a major project for the region and certainly our port and this community and our economic future. These highway projects are very interesting because they're not our project. If you really think about it, it's a state facility and it is therefore a state project. However, locals are always very bullish for improvements to the state routes in and around particularly the economic development areas, and we work with the state very closely. We have a great relationship, and we work together to continue to improve the state highway system for all of the goals that it has. And for us here, we need another crossing over our railroad tracks, and we need to enhance access into the port. I'm not going to get into all of those, but just an update for you. This project is on our regional metropolitan transportation plan, which is significant. We are on the list. We aren't on the list with an exact, precise design, but we are on the list as a concept. The RTC is the local promulgator of that list. It's on our CFP, of course, and you'll recall that this is the #1 transportation project, big picture, long term, for economic development and safety, maybe in the other order, safety and economic development. So we're very bullish on this. And the projects that are related to this, and I have a drawing that'll show this in a little bit, but everything that we're doing at 32nd Street is directly related to this project. So it's all a system. As you know, we're working on this with the port. Again, it's not our project, it's a state project, but we're working with the port on keeping it in front of the state. The conceptual design and the update that I showed you earlier to our CFP that we'll work with you more closely on in the future. We worked with Parsons Brinkerhoff to do that, coordinating very, very closely with the State Department of Transportation, our colleagues at RTC, and again, the port. It's on the Metropolitan Plan, and right now, you know, this is a project that's out there quite a few years. It's not going to happen next year. It's not designed. It's not permitted. However, you need funds to get going on it. And so we have an appropriation request in with the legislature for preliminary design. It's not it'd be a grant, essentially, probably through the Department of Transportation. It's $500,000, modest for the overall cost of this project, but we're hopeful for that project, and we're very appreciative of Senator Rivers and Representative Pike, who have both asked us what it is that we're trying to do, and
Good timing. Were you
are
waiting out
bullish
there?
for us doing that. So
Yeah. 500,000?
I was hoping that, yeah. It's a great partnership, and we're very, very appreciative of the understanding that our delegation has of our economic development needs here and our safety needs, probably first and foremost. So it's a tough budget year at the state level. We know that. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll keep at it no matter what happens. This is the concept. I won't get into great details. We've had extensive workshops, as you'll recall. This is just kind of an update and a refresher for all of us and those here. The split diamond concept at River Road to the west and over to 27th with the collector roads along the front. Lots of maneuvering going along because we're dealing with some real fixed situations that we already have, and obviously you always have to design around those. But that is the basic concept for the project that hopefully looks familiar to you. Little closer up to show some of those details on the south side, the lower side of this down in the port, and then the local streets coming off of that split diamond north at 27th, getting over to Evergreen. That's our second crossing, if you would, which is very, very important. This is just to kind of give you a feel for the dollars that are involved in these major projects. These are, I would say, conservative estimates, and in talking to the state, we're always looking for ways to do it less expensively, but this includes quite a lot of work. Not all of it is on the state route, but just the different facets of the project and the dollar amounts, it's a $100 million project. It's almost as much as our whole local transportation capital facilities plan. I would like to say this is a very, very conservative estimate and that we'll be able to dial this in better. But the engineers that work on these things want to be very conservative at the front.
Does the railroad of Union Pacific, do they have any responsibility of making, of these railroad track coverings?
Not really.
5%.
Right. They are our participants, but they do not have a responsibility to basically do the crossing. But they work with us. We have a good partnership with the railroad here locally, and just some real stuff where we're using some of their right-of-way actually out at our operations yard, and we're doing that project on 32nd with the grant. We work with them, and they helped expedite, as expedited as it can be in their process, I believe, to get the crossings through, but very nominal financial participation. And I won't get into any of the other topics that relate to potentially the urgency around the need for the crossing.
Their 5% is just for the portion that goes across railroads, right?
Right. It's not $5 million. Yeah.
I need to ask a question about the breakdown. Can you take a look at those costs and talk about what would be state highway department funds versus local?
Right. So the first bullet is those interchanges right on the route, so that 40. What most likely would be a phase 2 or 3 of this second phase of the overall project through Camas and Washougal, that 26 million, that's right on the state route. So the state, the collector and distributors would be part of the state project. The extension and grade separation over the railroad tracks, I think, is a mix. It's a split, and that's where I'm not exactly sure because it's a direct connection, and I'm not sure at what point the state may need to land it. I'm not sure. So there's potentially some local money required in that one. But we would be looking for federal and state dollars for the entirety of the project. But as that 27th extension heads to the north and lands, as we talked about in detail, some of those projects are more local projects, including the mitigation and and getting the right of way. So extensively, it's a state project, the vast majority of those dollars. Yeah.
Of which there are no appropriations at all right now.
Right.
For anybody.
Right. But the process that moves these projects forward, the way that it's set up through our regional transportation council, this project and the rest of the work that needs to be done on the bridge to the west through Camas, where the great project that's almost done with the last lifts of pavement will get done, and that'll get buttoned up. That's an incomplete project, and that the bridge needs to be widened to 2 lanes. It is dramatically safer now, but it still is 1 lane each direction. It's a great project. That has to get done. Then we need to keep it moving east all the way through the urban area. What should come first, the bridge or this one? I mean, we probably all have a perspective on that. They're both very, very important, both of those. So it will be done, but it will take some time. A couple of other initiatives that we're working on. This is, I think, a really, really important one, and it'll be a really helpful tool for the council. There's this thing called a street condition index, and it's kind of the state of practice now for agencies that have transportation infrastructure. We have a contract with a company called Capital Assets, very low cost, to pull this together for us, and we will have a complete inventory of all of our public and private roads in the city system. And we have that, but it'll be packaged more nicely. Each will be given a condition rating under the auspices of the technical things that drive this. I'm not a transportation engineer, so it's things, but whatever they use to rate it 0 to 100, we get a nice map, and it's a live map. So this is where I think it'll be a great tool for all of us as we look at what the impacts of financial policy choices are in terms of street maintenance. If we put this amount of money into it and do it here and do it in this way, in an interactive way, we'll be able to see what it does to the condition of our streets. So there'll be a big price tag, I'm sure. There'll be a policy choice about what condition of the streets should be. I don't know that we need 100. 100 is like a brand new perfect street, I would assume. And 0 is the opposite of that. But it'll be a great tool for us and a great tool for the community as the community explores how to fund maintenance of our streets. So that's happening right now. And then the other initiative is a much broader initiative. Thought I would bring this up. I recall very, very early in my tenure here, and I think it was a topic of conversation even before I got here, but I think one of the long-term goals that the mayor has is that in all of our neighborhoods that we would be able to safely walk around and that we would be able to handle storm runoff. And so we would have sidewalks and curbs and gutters in our urban and our suburban environment. That's a massive project. We have budget realities, but we are committed to exploring this. And so we've done our strategic plan, see where this fits into that. We're chasing after it with safe routes to schools and CDBG, but I know that the mayor, as we continue to move forward, wants to have a community conversation about how we could accomplish this goal over time and what would be the ways to make that happen. So we just lay that out there as we're trying to take care of the whole thing, right down to sidewalks in front of all of our houses in parts of town that don't have them. That's the end of my presentation, so if you want to do questions or kind of did questions as we went or comments.
I do have a handful of folks who wanted to speak on general transportation issues. And I'm just going to take them in the order they came to me.
If you hand me the mic, then I can bring the mic.
Yep. Mr. Briggs, you are first. You must have gotten here first.
I did. My questions have been answered by the excellent presentation by the city administrator for transportation issues, so I yield it to the next speaker.
You can hand the microphone to the former mayor guard right next to you.
Who's that? Oh, Jeff.
Actually, I'm not gonna need a microphone, I'm a guard. You know, a lot of my stuff is answered too, but I just wanted to kind of give some perspective from the past. You know, that a lot of this stuff has been submitted for a long time, it was on the 6-year TIP for a long time that they used to maintain. But particularly, I'm glad to see that we're still looking at the safe routes, because that was pretty big in Scott Sawyer's plan that we submitted back in 2004, 2005. It started the whole E Street Diet project there, but it also extended that project all the way out to Jemtigard. And I'd like to make sure that we keep that kind of in your vision as you move forward, and make sure you get those school districts to partner with you on that too. They've got a lot of sidewalks in there where they put the admin buildings out there, where we put the ball fields, so that was part of it back then. Glad to see you're still considering the overpass on 27th D Street, that was part of it too. And then bring a flying overhead in, and come back to in Scott's plan, it came in about, ironically, right where Totem is no longer in business, so that'd be nice to have that finished. And Hamilton did donate some land there too, so that's still live. And then finish that Highway 14. If we're gonna finish it, you're talking about 32nd, the flyover there, but is that gonna shut down 45th? Is that still part of the plan? It was at one time, going into the mobile home park.
Off of the freeway?
Yeah.
I don't know that.
They had a couple of nasty fatalities out there. One I didn't hear about was 32nd, and then when it turns into Stiles Road as you head up to the Four Corners and the urban growth property. That's really ancient roadway, and you're gonna see more people, cars, homes up there and everything, so we kinda need to make sure we keep that in mind. One thing I wanna mention about, I don't know if it's changed since I was in there, but transportation impact fees, they used to have a 50% allowance to developers, and if they put streets in or they put developed property, building lots. I was never for that, quite frankly, because it's not the intent of the impact fees. The intent of the impact fees is the impact that it has on surrounding areas from increasing the traffic in there, so. Can we get copies of the slides in the 6-year TIP? Or do I need to put in a public records request?
Should we put it on our website?
That'd be great, that'd be fun. And then last, I didn't mark CRC on there, but I did have a couple of things on there that I'm in favor of it, but I'm not in favor of the current plan. I do like light rail, I use light rail, but I think you ought to build it to accommodate it in the future, but it's just not the right time economically to do that. But I am supportive of that crossing, or as I call it, start considering the channel. Start thinking about that, the Columbia River channel in there. But that's been going on since, in fact, I was talking to Melissa about that earlier, is red light.
Red light.
Yeah, we started working at that. I was on the IRC board, which was RTC now, and we were talking about that whole project clear back in 1988. And so it's not as recent as some people say. It's been going on for quite a while. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I must, is this the period for the
General.
general?
Thanks, Mike.
To cover all the projects? I mean, all the things we're going to talk about today? I thought this
No.
was merely, okay. So there'll be a time to talk about CRC later. Thank you, sir.
Maria.
And just the mic is helpful so that we're recording this, so folks that watch later will be able to hear. That probably picked up.
So this is my first city council meeting, so I don't know how frequently you've talked about this subject, but I'm here mostly to testify, especially after looking at the presentation, that my home, my residence is off of 34th and I Street. So I'm just a block and a half away from Gaza Elementary School. I have a son that goes to that school, and I'm a couple blocks away from the Washougal High School. I get to see Fishback Stadium lights from my kitchen window, and I know when the paper makers are in town. So, but it's mostly to testify that that road's dangerous. I mean, you not only have these little children, they're going up the road. I'm on the very corner of I and 34th Street, and you have the high school kids too. So bless those high school kids. I think as parents, we kind of understand what goes along with that, and we expect it. But that road, something about that road, it's also a citizen concern. In the meanwhile, if there's no sidewalks, what kind of influence or some sort of project could we encourage folks to not walk in the middle of the road. The reality is the kids and adults are walking in the middle of the road that doesn't even have a sidewalk. And then you have the type of drivers that are consistently going in and out in the morning and afternoon. So with that being said, I have a 4-year-old and 6-year-old that unfortunately I do not feel entirely comfortable riding their cute little bikes on the corner of that road. So I'm neither a financial person or engineer, and so I appreciate all those who participate in these meetings, but at the end of the day, this is reality that has been happening since 2007, since I've been a homeowner in Washougal, and so maybe that's just a little push that as we move forward, that's certainly a project that I think should be highlighted sooner than later.
Thank you, Maria. Jim Ashley.
I'll reserve my comment.
Mrs. Terrell.
I'm particularly interested in. Oh, certainly, David. I'm particularly interested in transportation in a local sense because as I get along in life, it's becoming more and more clear that I will become one of the many people in Washougal who cannot drive anymore. We have a long, skinny geography. And what I'm seeing is that the bus goes along the bottom of it from the one end to the other. And if you don't live a couple of blocks from East Street, you are in deep doo-doo. It's about time we, again, I ask you please, Connie Jo, we want small buses. I see the buses going by. There's only 1 or 2 people in them anyway. If C-Van can have small buses, why cannot C-Tran have small buses? I know the big expense is the driver insurance, et cetera, but the fact is some of these roads around here would not accommodate those buses, the big ones, if you wanted to provide them. We need a Tunerville trolley. It should go around the town one way or the other way, but make it accessible within 2 or 3 blocks of most of the people who live in the older part of town, because they're usually the older people. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Ready?
Oh, hell yes.
Hang on just a second. Joyce, you had a question, comment?
I have a comment because I live. Can you guys use this too? I have a comment because I live on H Street, and yes, they walk in the middle of the road because the water collects on the sides. There are no sidewalks and there are no gutters, and it's very messy.
Thank you, Marilyn, for bringing that up. It's good that David Medor, a C-Tran board member, is here along with myself. At our retreat, I did mention that we need some C-Vans out here. Why are we driving that giant bus and spending all of that fuel when we have so little ridership? And secondly, I mentioned maybe we need to bip up 32nd and over and come back down 42nd. It's a good size loop in our community. So just letting you know I'm fighting for you.
Have you gotten any answers to either one of those?
Well, no.
Okay.
No answers.
Just asking.
Who's next?
That is it on the general transportation stuff. Yes.
Sorry, this is a very basic question. I didn't understand, I'm John Hines, I didn't understand a term that you used in your presentation that was grade separation. Can you explain that?
Sure. That's just to get a road over the top or underneath another road or a railroad. So, yeah.
Overpass.
Overpass or an underpass. So, Washougal River Road goes over the top of the railroad tracks. That's a grade separation. Over or under, right. We're looking at over for 27th. You're welcome.
Okay, with that, we're going to go into, start moving into the presentation on the Columbia River crossing. Our first presentation, Paul Montague from President of Identity, Clark County. Again, kind of similar to our Public Works folks who would have been here doing the presentation that Dave did, but Dave, thank you very much for handling that on the general transportation.
Did an excellent job on site.
He did well. They prepped him well. He's now taking the rest of the day off. Mainly because it's Saturday. Unfortunately, the Columbia River Crossing, we had this brought on quickly enough that they did not have anybody available either that could be here. So between themselves and the city, we asked Mr. Montague to be here to do a little presentation on the project itself. So with that, and again, for folks who have come in late, there are some comment cards or sheets outside in the foyer if you wish to make comment after the presentations. If you would fill one of those out and deliver it up here to the staff table, and that will get processed through. So with that, Mr. Montague, you've got 10 minutes. Again, this thing will start flashing at 8 minutes, flashing
right.
at 9 minutes, and then it'll really start flashing at you.
Well, who will come out and hit me? Oh, the microphone will, or Sean's going to come out and get me?
That's, remember I said I
You've got the
rarely
gavel.
use it. I don't
Oh, Lord.
use it that way.
Okay.
I throw it. So
that's how it's used.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first off, good morning. My name's Mayor Guard and council members. My name is Paul Montague. I'm president of Identity Clark County. I suspect probably many of you know Ginger Metcalf, who was my predecessor at Identity Clark County, and worked with her. ICC just a little bit. First, I don't work for the project, and actually my comments are more of a general nature about the economic benefit of the project. I brought with me some information from the project itself. For those of you in the audience, I will put them out on the table after we're done here, but they're there for you. One is a project overview, and the other one is answers to some common questions that's been recently done by the project staff itself. So I brought those for information. First, just ICC, we're not connected to the project. ICC is a privately funded nonprofit formed in 1993 to promote economic and community development here in Southwest Washington. We were here long before the CRC was envisioned, partnering with communities and other groups throughout Clark County to drive support for funding for projects like the Vancouver Hilton Hotel, downtown Vancouver, the SR 14 widening, the West Slough Bridge widening, the 192nd Avenue SR 14 interchanges are just a few of the projects that we've really tried to partner with other groups to support here in Southwest Washington. If I have my way, we've been here for 20 years. I hope we're around for another 20 years and seeing what we can do to partner with communities like Washougal to drive our communities forward and maintaining good quality of life as well. I come before you today really to speak in support of the Columbia River Crossing. Identity Clark County supports continued development and building of the Columbia River Crossing because we've long recognized the economic benefits provided to our region by this project. I suspect we'd all agree that the current Interstate 5 bridge is a piece of World War I era infrastructure that needs to be replaced. It's the only stoplight on I-5 in our country. It cannot keep up with the growth in Vancouver and Portland. It hurts businesses trying to get their goods to market. It slows people trying to get to and from work. And the only mass transit that's currently on the bridge today sits in the same traffic jams that everybody else sits in. Bringing this project to where it is today has been a long and complex process. With, of course, some missteps, it's also been a very thorough process. In short, this has been a marathon, not a sprint. It started with 71 different potential crossing elements and alternatives, including third bridges and other options. Whittled it down to 12 different configurations, and then leading to 5 crossing alternatives in 2008, at which point the communities on both sides of the river selected the locally preferred alternative, which is the crossing configuration that we have today. This project and various alternatives have been studied to death over the past 14 years. The goals of this project are pretty straightforward, and they're actually on the sheet, the project overview that I give you. It's about eliminating earthquake risk. It's about eliminating or reducing traffic risk and collision risks on I-5. It's about reducing traffic congestion, and it's about increasing freight mobility and pedestrian and bicycle access. The process to get us to this point has been a very democratic process, building a consensus solution arrived at through input from groups on both sides of the Columbia River. The CRC project team documents over 1,100 public hearings, meetings, and open houses, resulting in contacts with over 30,000 people and the input of over 7,500 public comments since 2005. The federal government has agreed to put $850 million into this project to pay for the construction of light rail, and another $200 to $400 million for bridge and highway construction. The Oregon legislature has approved $450 million in funding for this project, and I hope, Senator Rivers, that the Washington legislature will also approve another $450 million. Yeah. Throughout this process, the opponents and critics of this project have pursued the demise of this project with an almost religious zeal. They brought in hired guns, floated alternative after alternative, configuration after configuration, and raised issue after issue, which have been answered by the CRC project team and the staffs of the Washington and Oregon Department of Transportation. The package that I gave you with the answers to common questions is just the most recent round. The project, admittedly, is not a perfect solution. I'll bet every one of us here today would have our own idea about the best solution for replacing the Interstate 5 bridge. Oh, sorry. But when all is said and done, this has been a consensus solution arrived at over 10 years, pulling in together many different partners to make this work. How am I doing on time, Sean?
You are at 6 minutes and 20 seconds.
Oh, life is good. It's the solution we have, and we will not see another one for decades if we don't move forward with this solution. When Senator Patty Murray spoke to the regional business leadership at the CREDC luncheon a couple of weeks ago, she made some key points regarding the project. First, a light rail component is absolutely necessary to secure federal funding for this project. Second, local revenues and tolling will also be needed. Whether or not we have light rail with this project, we will see some form of tolling on it. And third, any further attempt to change the current bridge design will cause years, if not decades, of delay. I would add the comments that really it's not just a matter of keeping the current federal and Oregon partners at the table, but think about it. What currently elected politician or elected official would be willing to touch another bridge project if this one goes down? The Board of Directors of Identity Clark County, the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce, and the Columbia River Economic Development Council have all weighed in support of the Columbia River crossing. Not just for the regions cited by the project, but we've supported this process and this project throughout its history because we believe it will raise the economic tide for communities throughout our region for decades to come. We've all heard about the 2,000 jobs that would be created during the course of the project design, construction, and completion. And we've all heard about the additional indirect and induced jobs that would be created during the course of this project. Last December, the results of an economic benefits study were released by the project, and I don't know how many of you have seen it, but a couple of key points that it released. First, it showed a net economic benefit to our region of $5 to $8 billion. And it's even with the hits and tolls and all the rest of it taken into account. It showed 4,200 regional jobs being created, creating $231 million in additional wages. in 2030. And it showed an annual elimination of 6.8 million hours of travel time for folks traveling through the project area annually, generating somewhere in the neighborhood of savings to businesses and individuals of $435 million per year. We need the jobs, and this project will make a difference in Clark County. At legislative hearings in Salem and Olympia and recent county commissioner meetings, numerous business groups, individual businesses, including Thompson Metal Fab and Greenberry Manufacturing, for example.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Oh, how many?
30.
Oops. Shoot. Whoops, okay. Okay. And that's on tape, isn't it? Okay. All right. Anyway, I brought with me a letter from the High Tech Council, who also spoke and recently wrote a letter to the governor on behalf of the project. This includes Kyocera, Sharp Electronics, Enlight Photonics Underwriters, and others. I support the Columbia River Crossing because I believe it's the single largest, and we support it because we believe it's the single largest economic development project in our region, in our generation, or the next. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Well,
Paul.
time sure does fly when you're having fun.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's
Thank you very much.
for those of you who have not been in our chambers lately. We have just upgraded all of our systems, all of that good stuff. We did it through PEG funds, the Public Education Governmental Access. Anyway, part of that we get to go on television with our meetings. There's a reason, not yet, and there's a reason that we chose the 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning hour so that we could go back through and do a little.
Thank you.
Paul, thank you. And now we have a presentation from, I guess you just call it the opposing group, Tiffany Couch, David Medor, and John Charles. There is enough play on the microphone too. It should pick you up, and you can always move around if you need to as well.
See you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Honorable Mayor, City Council, thank you for having us here today. My name is Tiffany Couch. I'm a certified public accountant and certified fraud examiner, and I own a forensic accounting business right down the road in Vancouver. And I am going to address you very quickly today to give time to my other teammates here. I want to talk to you about the true cost of this project because it will impact not only the citizens of Washougal, but the citizens of all of Southwest Washington. I've given you, it says Exhibit D at the top. It was part of a different, larger package. But this is a $5.5 billion project. All of my numbers come directly from the Columbia River Crossing Project documents. And their final environmental impact statement tells us about a $3.5 billion bridge. But then it also spells out things like interest on debt and operation and maintenance costs of the bridge. And all of those items cost $2 billion for a total cost of $5.5 billion. The CRC has already told us how they're going to collect that $5.5 billion, and I've summarized those numbers down below. They want to get $450 million from each of the states, and they want to get $850 million in New Starts grant money. That money is not guaranteed. The federal government has not promised that money. It has only promised that we can get in line for the money and be considered for it. That money will have to be asked for every year, 8 years in a row, for approximately $100 million a year. That is called the New Starts grant. That grant is not being funded at the same levels it has been in the past, and that $850 million is not guaranteed. $400 million federal discretionary. That program no longer exists. The CRC has indicated that that money is no longer available. And even if it were available, they were asking for $400 million of the $500 million available nationwide. And there are other WashDOT projects competing for the same exact money. The majority of the project will be paid for by tolls, and their initial plan called for $3.3 billion in tolls over approximately 30 years. That has changed as of 2 days ago. We've gotten their new tolling plan, their new tolling study. It is on the CRC website. It calls for tolls that will start in 2016 and go through 2060. So it is a 45-year tolling plan, and they plan now to collect approximately $6 to $7 billion in tolls under each of their 3 scenarios. My question is, at this point in time, why do we need $6 to $7 billion worth of tolls? Why is it going out to 2060? I'm not sure whether that additional amount is due to debt coverage, whether it's due to increased interest on the project, and or whether it is related to the fact that some of these other funding sources will not be available, and the tolls will need to be paying for the majority of the project. Lastly, I really appreciated Mr. Scott's presentation, and I just want you to understand that certain city, your ability to have other projects that directly impact your city could be affected, you know, if this project goes through, and if WashDOT's taking on debt, there's going to be less money for smaller cities to be able to do their local projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is John Charles. I'm president of Cascade Policy Institute, a nonprofit policy research center based in Portland, and I appreciate you having me as a guest here today. Because time is limited, I'll focus. First of all, I have a yellow sheet here that everybody should have. To me, I've followed this project for all 17 years. I've testified many, many times in 2 different states on it. And I would say I like to reduce it to a few what I call deal breaker issues. One is that the Glenn Jackson I-205 bridge was built by the visionaries who built it with 144 feet of river clearance. And this particular bridge being proposed will have 116 feet of clearance, which is going to be a big problem for a number of major employers in this region. My question is, from the very beginning, 18 years ago, they should have said we're not going to replace a bridge that has less clearance than the I-205 bridge. So why are we even talking about this? Second, the light rail component, you already have an excellent express bus transit system operated by C-Trans with park and rides. Just not too far from here, you have a park and ride at Salmon Creek. You have, I think, 6 different routes to go over. And the speed of the express bus system is such that if those are cannibalized, which at least one of the routes will be, by light rail, current transit customers will see their time of travel go up by roughly 125%. Well, that's another deal breaker. I'm a transit user, but if you tell me my time of travel is going to go from 16 minutes to 36 minutes, I'm gone. I'm out. So if this were a high-speed rail project and transit customers were going to be made, let's just say, 50% better off, well, that would be a reasonable discussion to have. Is it worth spending almost $1 billion to make 1,500 peak-hour commuters better off? When you're going to make them more than 100% worse off, that is a deal breaker. That's gone. And third, as this sheet shows, TriMet isn't even eligible for this $850 million because they cannot promise 20 years of operation of the train because they've already admitted they're going broke. And I mean, they're going to be cutting approximately 49 bus lines in 4 years, according to a presentation they made 3 weeks ago. Potentially 69 bus lines or 79 bus lines by 2025. That means they're essentially going out of business. Well, you had a vote here on a sales tax increase in Clark County that went down recently. So neither C-Tran nor TriMet has said they have the money to operate the trains. If you don't have the money to operate the trains, the federal government will not give you capital money. So to me, these are deal breakers. The whole idea is just bad, and you'd be a lot better off adding a 3rd, 4th, 5th bridge scattering traffic, giving people more options to get across the river, much smaller options, save all the money, and put more money into the smaller, more cost-effective projects that I've listened to for the last 45 minutes here that are of much greater value to you in this community than this bridge. I view this bridge as having no value to you whatsoever. Thank you.
Extra if anybody else wants some. Good morning. I'm your newest county commissioner, David Medore, and it's a pleasure to be able to have a seat at the table here. First, I'd like to be able to just simply make a few corrections. Paul Montague shared a few things. He brought up the first point, which is economic benefit. And really the question is economic benefit to who, to whom? Is it really an economic benefit to the citizens of Washougal? The federal government has not in any way guaranteed $850 million for this project. There was early on an opportunity for $850 million from the Federal Transit Administration available for light rail if we match that. We really don't have a match for that, and $850 million has gone away. If we did, the local match would consist of tolling the highway, and we would call that our local match. That's the fundamental reason for tolls. The people of Washougal, really the question is, have they approved this project? Have they endorsed this project rather than the contractors? That really comes down to it. So let me just look at our first, I only have 4 basic facts here. A number of people will say this is really a complicated project. It's really not. It's really very, very simple. And I like to point out the simplicity of it. This is just simply just giving us some perspective, because numbers by themselves mean nothing unless you have context, unless you know what it compares to, some reference point. So one thing that we're all very familiar with is the I-205. The I-205 was built only 30 years ago. 30 years ago. That is what has changed between now and then. Well, the cost of the I-205, $169.5 million, was the total cost for the I-205. It worked the way it should have with a 4-cent per gallon gas tax, federal gas tax. It's gone up. Now we have many times that multiple. But if you look at the comparison between the cost of the I-205 versus the cost for this project to tear down an existing bridge and replace it with a bridge that accommodates light rail, just the cash price, it provides a pretty dramatic contrast. But notice that we're not paying cash. We don't have the money for cash. And the $8,700 million that the current project at least was starting out costing, and it's gone up substantially since then, doesn't it make the I-205 cost look a little bit more like dust on the scale? Okay, if you move to the next point here, I went to the website to see what does the CRC say. You can find this on that site. I added the link there so that you can go to it and see it. They say, will tolls be implemented on the I-205? And what they say on their site, it is unknown at this time. Some of the CRC tolling scenarios studied include tolling the I-205 to determine revenue potential, traffic effects, and public opinion. If the states decide to pursue tolling the I-205, both the Federal Highway Administration and the state legislatures would need to approve it. So will the I-205 be tolled? According to the CRC, we don't know at this time.
Commissioner, we're already 2 minutes over. My apologies. Teresa, could you, if we've got a copy, could you make sure and make copies of the presentation for everybody in the audience? My apologies. That was one of the things we said up front was we had 10 minutes for both sides. So,
Mr. Mayor, I would like him to go on. We can give Mr. Montague a chance for rebuttal, so we can take the overage in time. I mean, if the council would.
I agree. I'd like to see us finish the presentation. Probably 3 or 4 minutes of our time this morning isn't asking too much. I appreciate
Mr.
that.
Montague, would you like a few minutes after for rebuttal?
Yes. It'll be interesting, but yes.
Okay, then I agree.
Commissioner, so again, we asked to put rules to this ahead of time. I'm going to go ahead and extend it another 2 minutes. So you'll need to work through the presentation, and then Paul will give you another 2 minutes, which actually will give you another 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. What this points out is really the need for a two-way conversation. One of the points that Mr. Montague pointed out is that the critics show up, but the proponents do not, and that is a valid point. Here we have a bureaucracy that's paid $169 million, and yet they don't show up. So we really need a two-way conversation. If you'd like to be able to move to if you look at the numbers at the bottom of that slide, you'll see that these are the closest comparisons that we have to real tolls for the most recent project. This comes off of their website. I include the web address there. This is what the SR 520 bridge tolls are. Cars, $6 or $7.68, and by mail there's always a charge, and they're planning on doing the same thing here. That's the most comparable project, the most recent project, and notice what it does when you actually have freight traffic. Is that going to support, or is that going to be discouraging to freight traffic? Also coming off the CRC site, even though it's outdated, and these are the numbers that they're telling us what the tolls will cost, notice that it does not include the $450 million which are refunded by tolls from Oregon or Washington, or the debt service for both or the TIFIA loans, or any cost overruns. Notice also the next slide. The question is, how does it affect Washougal? This is the dark shades there represent the precinct turnout or outcome from the election that was already happened here in November. And notice that Washougal has a color that indicates that the majority of the people said no to funding the operation and maintenance of light rail. Notice also one more thing. You'll see that if you move over to the middle of the slide, there is a line that points down vertical to that 84 in Portland that jumps across the island. That's where, if we say yes to this project, which would discourage people from taking the 5 bridge, that would divert traffic to the 205, which would provide end up with 2 scenarios. One, it would either congest the 205 and impact the citizens of Washougal, or it would require the necessity for to correct that problem with tolls to discourage people from crossing the 205. What we're saying no to is that vertical line there, a bridge across 192nd Avenue. So all of this is sorting out priorities. So a smarter priority, we really need 4 bridges across that river. And it's a matter of, are we going to mortgage the future with all of this cost burnt on the replacing an existing bridge for a light rail bridge, or are we going to end up with a more practical project that would directly benefit the citizens of Washougal? Instead of providing more pain across the river, it provide more relief across the river. So I would encourage the citizens or the representatives of the people here who are really representing the citizens who have already voted on this project to consider not necessarily the makeup of the citizens in the room here, but listen to and pay attention to the citizens that in your community have already voted on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Paul. Connie Joe, just so we know.
And here I thought I was done for the day. Well, thank you for having me back up. Just a couple of comments. You know, one of the things that I've seen, and I didn't really go into it when I was talking about some of the opposition to this, is most of the comments that I've seen in terms of the critics and the opponents to this project, typically it's about how do we create some fear, uncertainty, and doubt about the value of the project. Well, I mean, and some of them are valid questions, but when I look at figures like that for a $3 billion project, we're going to spend $6 billion in financing. For me, that really raises some significant questions. One is where they're getting their figures from, and then what are they doing with them? Secondly, you know, when we build, how many of you own a home, right? Got a mortgage? When you bought your house, you didn't pay or didn't look at, you said, I'm buying a $200,000 house. You didn't look at the financing costs and go, I'm buying a $400,000 house. You said, it's a $200,000 house, and that's what we do. And financing is a piece of any project that we look at. Any, you know, if we look at, and David, you can account to this, financing is always a factor that you're looking at when you do an SR 14. A third bridge, I agree, at some point down the road, a third bridge is definitely something that we need to look at as a region. And I know as a course of this project, third bridges in Ridgefield, by the rail bridge near the Port of Vancouver, and here at 192nd have all been looked at by the project staff and been considered. And essentially, the problem with third bridge options or other options is they do not address the needs of relieving congestion on Interstate 5. They address other needs, and they would make sense at some point, but they don't address the core needs of getting rid of a piece of infrastructure that's 100 years old and prone to safety issues, and it doesn't relieve the congestion problems that we see on Interstate 5. There are other factors that I've watched. I've watched this process, and actually in the answers to frequently addressed questions, I've watched throughout this process. I've only been around this thing for 2 years, but over the past 2 years that I've been involved in watching this project, as I've watched folks, critics, opponents to this project raise questions, raise issues, play sometimes with the facts, I've watched the staffs of the CRC and the WashDOTs come back and address them. And it's all documented. And it's something that I've been comfortable with seeing the solutions that have come out of them. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to go into public comments. Again, for folks that have filled out the paperwork, I'm going in no particular order.
Where would you sort them with what, for residents and non-residents? Can you do that?
That's all I have in my hand at the moment are residents.
Did you put the gentleman here that said he'd like to wait? What's your name? I'm
Jim.
sorry. Jim? I think it got settled. You put it back in that pile?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I saw you set it down.
Mr. Freeman, you are up first. By random selection. The gentleman with the microphone.
Thank you. Well, I hate to be first, but I don't agree with the bridge in its current proposed state. I think that bridges can be built for less. I do believe we need more bridges, not one super expensive bridge that doesn't truly answer all of the needs that the river has. Coast Guard can't get under it. Other companies can't get under it. I think that congestion is not going to get any better once you start tolling the I-5 to pay for that expensive bridge that I don't want. I travel across the I-205 bridge. I'm going to get tolled for that. I don't think that that's fair. I'm skeptical when somebody that's building a project tells me, don't worry, it's going to only cost this much money. I'm old enough to have seen overruns and seen them all my life, and I believe that's exactly what's going to happen. When I did build my house, thank you very much for using that as an example, I knew exactly what it was going to cost me. The guy who was building it didn't come back to me later and say, oops, you're going to pay another 2 or 3 times the amount that I quoted you the first time. That's it.
Thank you,
For
Bob.
me.
Steve's right behind you. Robert Fulmer. There we go.
I'm a local resident here. I'm really for replacing the eyesore bottleneck I-5 bridge, but I have some real concerns about it. Number one, what happens 10, 20, 30 years from now when we need to jack it up another 50 feet in the air to clear the new generation of ships that are going to be coming up and down the river? And my real concern is I don't see the value of the light rail importing Portland's criminal element to Washougal and East County or all of our county. I think that we need to look at the impact that that will have on our community with light rail. That light rail seems to be one of the major forms of transportation for the criminal element, other than automobiles, of course. And I think we need to consider that. As far as, and correct me if I'm wrong, the total suggested price of this bridge is roughly approaching $1 billion. Is that correct, or is it 3?
3.5.
Okay, that money is available in other forms than taxes, tolls, and U.S. government federal funding. And if anyone wants to discuss that, I'd be more than happy to talk to them about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulmer. Diana Kretschmar. These are just in random order.
I don't need a microphone.
We need it for the tape.
Okay.
Kretschmar.
Diana Kretschmar. I'm a Washougal resident, and I remember many years ago listening in my parents' kitchen in Forest Grove, Oregon, about how the Glenn Jackson Bridge was going to bring ruin to Oregon, and they were going to bear the cost of the $9.9 million, I think it was at the time, and how my generation was going to be impacted on the 205 bridge that was in a part of Portland that wasn't going to even be viable. I also remember my parents saying we didn't need the Fremont Bridge. I grew up with that. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a public person. I'm just a mother here in Washougal. I have kids who are the next generation. I have 6 of them. And to me, it's about living and lifestyle and doing the right thing. Do I like light rail now? No. Does my family use light rail? No. But in 30 years from now, I'm 47 years old. When I get close to 70, I might want to use light rail and I might want to get places. I might want my kids to have accessibility. That's my viewpoint as a mom. I think the bridge is a good idea, but I'm going to say one thing before I give up the mic. And that is, I've commented a few times on just being nice about the bridge. I've been called names, I've been called stupid, uneducated, all sorts of things for just saying, let's be nice. And in all of this, I've heard multiple comments and commentary from different people. And as we go on, I just hope we can all be respectful. I respect all of you and your view, and I hope you respect mine. And whatever comes out of the bridge, that we just remember we all have to live together in the same community. And I look at many of you sitting on the other side who I work with in real life, in real time. I'm looking at the wonderful Dave Medora, and I love him dearly, but I don't agree with him. But that's okay. And so as we go forward, I just ask my community to honor each other as citizens and people, and let's not be mean, rude, or angry any longer. That's all I have to say.
Diana, would you stand up for a second? There's a reason why Diana 2 days ago was, I think there are many reasons why she was awarded one of the IRIS Women of Achievement Awards for Clark County. And thank you for saying what you just said. Dan Corsi.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. I live here in Washougal. Not much of a public speaker, but I'll try. I've been researching the Columbia River Crossing Project for 10 years now, and I find it grossly inadequate to meet the needs of the people of Southwest Washington and Washougal. I cross the bridge every day. I could go on for a long time about why I oppose it and all that, but I'm fully in support of Tiffany Couch, Mr. Charles, and Commissioner Modor and what they've said here today, and I think it's a bad thing for Washougal and Clark County. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Dan. Jim Ashley.
Good morning. The primary point I wanted to make here this morning was regarding the vote for the sales tax. I opposed the sales tax because I don't think it's the right venue to pay for light rail, but I support light rail. Now, I know that light rail may not be the time for light rail, but I think we need to look to the future. And I would love to see light rail going up to Salmon Creek, coming down 205, coming out to Washougal, that in conjunction with a bus system. And I don't see this being something that we're going to accomplish today, but I think we need to look 30, 40, 50 years into the future. We see the issues with the cost of gasoline, congestion, population. This is just another alternative. People need to have a choice. That being said, I think we need to look at the bridge. We need to consider the issue of the height of the bridge. That needs to be addressed because I think that's very important for the future also. But we also need to build the bridge with the provision that light rail can be brought across that bridge in the future. It doesn't have to be today. The overall cost of the project, I think, is excessive. I wouldn't mind seeing the bridge built without all the other portions being included at this time. I think we can all agree that this bridge is pretty old, and in the event of an earthquake, it's probably not going to be there. What are we going to do then? I think we need to start thinking about this now and addressing this issue. So I could go on. There's a lot of information. I want to thank Commissioner Modor and the City Council for the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Kretschmar.
Last year, our 18-year-old son had a minor surgery, and I had to take him to a specialist in Portland for a follow-up appointment. And as I sat behind a bridge lift, cursing the fact I did not have the specialist's phone number, I just had his primary care physician's phone number, and I sat there in the phone tree on Kaiser trying desperately to get connected to let them know. And I finally did, and they said, "Oh, bridge lift, okay, no problem. We'll hold your appointment." This is a daily impact to the citizens of Clark County. We all deal with it. We all have kids. It's there. I've spent my career as a manager. I maintain facilities. I maintain restaurants. Part of my job is to identify needs and meet them. Sometimes they're short-term. Hey, the bridge just fell in the water. We need to fix it. Sometimes they're long-term. The bridge might fall in the water, and we need to plan for it. There is a need for this bridge. Are there individual details that are deal breakers? I don't know. I'm a compromise guy. I'm the pragmatist. I see R, I see D, I see a lot of friends in here, but we're all impacted by this decision. I support it. I don't see any deal breakers. Hopefully we can come up with compromises.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Oh, I get the mic, please. Let's see. In past years, Clark County voted not to have light rail by a significant percentage. Ignoring this vote, a committee of a few put light rail on a proposed I-5 bridge. Last year, the Columbian printed one of my letters titled, and they titled this, Bridge Story, Follow the Money. $140 million from Washington state taxpayers, I believe it was Washington state money, towards the planning of a new bridge with light rail included. The money went to David Evans and Associates. An audit of this money was denied, and the reason given in the newspaper was it would have revealed trade secrets. My goodness, trade secrets for our money. The total spent was reported as being $160 million just recently, and still no approval from the Coast Guard. The latest info about cost CRC money is marked for expansion of a TriMet maintenance facility in Gresham, Oregon, and upgrades to Portland Steel Bridge, among other items. Our Washington tax dollars at work to benefit Oregon. This makes me question why the audit request by forensic accountant Tiffany Couch was denied. By ignoring maritime regulations on what the Coast Guard would require for clearance height, gave, in my opinion, the designer the green light to have a 95-foot clearance, later expanded to 116 feet. That is still not high enough to allow upstream products of over 116 feet clearance to pass under. Now, hold on your wallet, folks. The CRC has stated just recently they will pay these companies compensation of about $200 million, probably more, plus lots of jobs, and the companies, some of them have already said they will relocate. To raise the bridge to 125 feet would cost $250 million, and that would be kind of a push. The cost of light rail on the new I-5 bridge would be about $1 billion or more, plus $2 or so million per year to operate it. Can we really afford light rail at this time, if ever? State Senator Ann Rivers says it best, quote, to get to the 11th hour and realize you haven't done your homework from the first hour, end of quote. I take that to mean the CRC has put the cart before the horse, or they haven't got their ducks in line. They're starting with a premise that the Coast Guard probably should refuse.
Harvey, I need you to wrap up.
All right, very close. This has placed the Coast Guard under the gun. The political pressure has to be huge due to a Washington Senator's approval of the light rail. I favor a resolution by the City Council to eliminate light rail from the new I-5 bridge, if not the whole bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, folks.
Mr. Briggs.
Hi, I'm Mike Briggs. I live in Washougal. First off, council, mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak, because this is not a right I speak here. It's a privilege, and I appreciate that. The rights we do have, however, is that every one of us can go speak to our representatives, in the state legislature about this bridge, whether you're for it or against it. I encourage everybody to do that. I've done that. This is a city council meeting. I appreciate that. But if the council is considering a resolution, which is a formal document from our city to whomever, I guess it would be the state, it will be non-binding, of course, because the matter rests before the legislature. And I don't want to see Washougal, even in good intent, to get a black eye on issuing a resolution which will have no legal effect. You want to talk here? That's great. I think it's wonderful. I don't want to see the council go to the state and get a black eye. I remember the Arizona Immigration Act that we passed, or the council pact, my council. I don't think it was a great thing to do. I think to do another one like that, even though it's a more relevant issue, we cannot affect the legislature. Senator Ann Rivers, right over here, is one of our people that represents us. I like Senator Ann Rivers. I think you should descend upon her when this meeting's over and get your points across. Representative Pike and Representative...
The door's over here, Ann, the closest one.
Representative Pike and Representative Mr. Vick are not here, and that's fine too. That's my point is I'm obviously for the bridge, but I am not for Washougal issuing a resolution to that effect. Each one of you separately, no problem, go to the governor if you wish, but not as a legislative body. I think that would be a mistake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, the last, we can certainly come back to comments from other folks. The last part of the session that we had for today was to be on other generic topics for the city. And Mr. Briggs, I believe you're the only one that has marked that on there. Is there anything that you wanted to?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't hear the last sentence.
In regards to just general issues, other topics for the city?
I've talked long enough. I've made my point. I think I'll give the floor.
I think that is appreciated. Thank you.
Spoke a little bit about CRC earlier, but I wanted to add a couple things. Is it okay?
1 minute?
Yeah.
Do I have a 1 minute on here?
Okay. I read a letter to the editor last week that I thought kind of summarized it for me. You know, he just basically broke it down to do it once, but make sure you do it right. And if we spent $160 million so far, when you look at the total scope of that project, I think, so what? You know, it's not too late to redesign and do some things. I mean, some of that 160, a lot of that was an environmental impact statement, and that's huge, but that's not going to go away. Also, speaking of 205 again, that was all 1970s and 80s dollars. It did open in 1983 because my son was a baby at that time. But they started planning for that in the late 50s, and Sean knows we had family friends that actually had properties fall under eminent domain, or as we call it, takings. And honestly, you know, you read a lot that, hey, 205 was built to accommodate light rail. No, it wasn't. And we knew that back in the late 80s. You know, that was, I can remember having that conversation with Dean Lookingbill. And also, if anybody wants to go down to the port, Camas, Washougal, they have a conceptual drawing of 1958 that shows a Lady Island Bridge going over to Troutdale. And I promise I will fight that vehemently if that ever happens. And then a quote I really like, and it comes from Senator Ted Kennedy, and I know a lot of people didn't care for him, and he had his issues. But he once said, always strive for compromise, but never compromise your principles. And I think that's, with what Diana already said and everything, I think that applies. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Dave, could you bring the microphone over to Senator Rivers?
Could I sit at the table?
Sure. That mic works even better.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mayor Gard and members of the City Council. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to visit with you today. I thought as you proceed with your discussions, it might be wise for you to know a little bit about where we in the Senate are with transportation funding. I don't know if you recently saw the poll that was done about transportation funding and the appetite for a gas tax package in the state, but it came out some 72% of the people who were polled said absolutely not. They were in favor of taxing what's called the HST, the hazardous substance tax, because those big oil refineries deserve to pay more money. So when I heard that, I went to the Oil Marketing Association and I said, translate that for me to a per gallon of gasoline increase, and they said 12 to 13 cents per gallon. So people can say we're going to tax the big oil refineries, but the reality is that we will end up paying that at the pump. When that information was added in, the amount skyrocketed against an increase in transportation funding. Right now, the state is in a particularly ticklish situation because of the cost overruns on the 520 floating bridge. I was pleased to see Commissioner Medor bring that forward. It hadn't occurred to me that that might come up today, but they now have some $200 million in cost overruns on that project alone, and the toll revenues have been significantly less than were anticipated. The outcome is that they have now begun the process to toll I-90. The people of Mercer Island are, of course, terribly distressed about this, as are the other folks who have to use I-90 who never go to Mercer Island. So there's great concern about this. So when we talk about tolling 205, it's not so far off base, because now we have a precedent, and that's very concerning to many folks. So we have all of these mega projects online. We have the North-South Freeway in Spokane. We have a new Columbia River crossing at the Tri-Cities. I might note for you that this is their 4th bridge across the Columbia River, which I think is an interesting eventuality. We have the tunnel. We have the 520 floating bridge. We still have the Tacoma Narrows Bridge on the books. That money does come out of the general fund to pay for costs on that bridge. And then we have our Columbia River crossing. So we also have the 167 interchange. So we've got some mega projects that are billions of dollars. And we have no will of the people to pay an increased gas tax to cover even the maintenance of our existing infrastructure, let alone begin construction of new infrastructure. So that's the reality that we find ourselves in. At the same time, we have high efficiency vehicles, hybrids, electrics, and in my case, a diesel that gets great gas mileage. But what that means is that people are not paying in as much in gas tax as they have paid in the past. And so that diminishes our ability to maintain our existing infrastructure even more. So what you can see is that we have this sort of perfect storm of a lack of money, but a lot of need for money, or perceived need for money. And that's what we're really up against. I do not believe we will come out with a transportation package this year. I just do not see it happening. I believe that we're going to be able to do some things to help Washougal out in our capital package. And that's what I've been pushing for. I think that of all the communities in my district, Washougal is poised to explode with a little bit of help in terms of infrastructure. Additionally, let's not forget about the work that we need to get done with the sewer system. So it's not just transportation, but it's also taking care of that very basic infrastructure need. So I want to be very clear with you that I believe that our jobs this year will come from the capital budget. They will come from the capital plan that we are putting forth. We've done our early action schools capital budget, and it's now sitting in the House, and I'm sort of in the mind that it may become a political chit to bargain with. But I just do not see a transportation package coming out of the Senate. So as you move forward, I would like for you to keep all of this information in the back of your mind and use it as calculus as you're weighting your projects. And I also want you to keep in the back of your mind that I'm doing everything that I can do within the confines of that capital budget to help you meet your needs, the needs of the citizens of this community who are your constituents and who also are my constituents.
Senator, you raised an issue that I'm really focused on here. I believe that whatever this council does on this issue ought to be focused on Washougal. A lot of stuff, I have my own feelings about light rail. I'm skeptical about it, would be the best way to express it, but I don't see that it has much of an impact directly on Washougal. The one thing that really does is I-205, and if that ends up being tolled, and I'm concerned that that's a possibility, and I think your I-90 analogy is very apt, I just would like some more comment on the possibility of that happening.
I've always thought, well, when I first began about 2 years ago, really digging into the project, I contacted the primary securities folks that we'd be dealing with, and they were from Australia. I don't know why a lot of money's coming out of Australia right now, but it is. So I talked with KPMG, and they said they would never write a bond for the I-5 that didn't include tolling of the 205. To that end, I put a provision in the budget, the transportation budget last year, that there would be no tolling of the 205. And then Oregon promptly retorted that that was just fine. They're happy to collect their toll and our toll on their side of the 205. So that's the reality that we're looking at. And it's not, people say it can never happen. It's really hard to toll. It's hard to toll an interstate that is seeing no improvement, but we're seeing it right now on I-90. So I just think that it's my responsibility to be protective of my people and make sure that the project that we get makes the most fiscal sense and doesn't limit any, you know. I had a gentleman call me. I've received probably about maybe 100 emails over the past week, and I've gotten 4 negative emails from constituents who say, I have to cross that bridge every day to get to work. And to them, my response is, I can make sure that you get the best possible project now, so that as a project is completed, your commute time will be decreased. Or I can get you across that bridge very quickly for, you know, $5 to $7 in tolls, so that you sit in congestion on just the other side, which, according to the CRC information that we have received, it is a 1-minute improvement in commute time. So I would rather, if people are going to pay the money to get across that bridge, then they've got a free pass all the way through, instead of rushing across the bridge and then stopping dead in traffic. So.
And is two questions on the tolling of 205. The conversation with KPMG, was that, did they give you a reason that they wanted to do that? Was it just to get paid back sooner? And
no, it was diversion.
Okay.
It's too close to the I-5 bridge.
Okay. And the second thing, there was information in some of the information given to us, and I don't remember whose packet it was in, that in order to toll the 205, it would need the approval of both states and the federal transportation. Is that correct? Or?
Yes.
But I-90 most likely just needed the state and the federals.
The state and the feds. But we already know, based on recent media coming out of Oregon, that they are willing to do that. So, and our governor, I believe, would be willing to do it as well. And our new
but would the legislature in Washington not also have to approve?
We don't get to. It's not a legislative. I wouldn't get to have a say on that.
Oh. Okay.
So the new the appointee to the Department of Transportation actually wrote several letters to the governors expressing her desire to have 205 tolled for this project.
And she's saying it's the governors that make that decision.
And the state tolling, yeah, it would be the transportation commissions.
Thank you for being here this morning. You are being fantastically helpful for us up there. Your legislative aide calls David and I on a regular basis and lets us know where things are, and I know she's got a lot of other things going on and probably a whole lot of those same phone calls going on. So
I would like to say that Representative Pike called me and expressed her desire to be here today, but she does have floor action today, and so she was deeply apologetic that she couldn't be here to hear the concerns of our constituents and to participate in the discussion. But she had to go take votes. So thank you so much for everything you do. Just one last thought. You know, the legislature, I'm going to have a discussion with my good friend, Mr. Briggs. The legislature sends resolutions to the feds all the time to express our concern or our desire for movement and action and so forth. So if I were to get one from you, it's just another form of communication to me that tells me the will of this body on behalf of your constituency. So I just want to say that so that you don't think that it's untoward or inappropriate in any way.
No, because certainly as we send you those letters, it says, please give us a direct appropriation for $500,000 to design. We really want you to take action on that.
You're not kidding me.
We want to influence you.
Thank you all so much for your service. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you. We're about 10 minutes after at the moment. I do have two other sheets for folks who are not within the city. Do we want to go that direction? Do we want to call it good? Do we?
Just wondering, do we get to share our stance, or are we going to do that Monday night?
You guys are making it up as we go, so it's we are here for you.
What we have to say, or do you want to? Can we ask them?
We have two
speech. Do you want to hear? No, what I'm saying is, do you want to hear our opinions today, or do you want us just to let you go home and we're going to talk about it Monday night?
Everybody has an opinion. What are the solutions? The people in this community right now being lied and cheated and deceived out of millions of dollars, and the newspapers don't have the courage to print.
Joe, thank you.
Let's go
So,
the two cards. And then we can
okay, first one I've got is from Mr. Anderson from Camas.
right here.
My name's Alan Anderson. I live in 116 Southeast James in Camas. I want to thank you for the opportunity of speaking with you folks. I want to begin by voicing my opposition to the Columbia River crossing. I believe this project is overpriced for what this region can afford. We were never offered a less expensive alternative. All the offers we got from the Columbia River crossing were all mega projects. We did not get a cheaper alternative, a simple steel bridge across the river to help divert traffic. But instead they want to tear down a bridge and rebuild one when at their own projections will be at max capacity when complete. We're not gaining anything. So we need to kibosh this project. We need to ask for an accounting of the $160+ million that has somehow fell into the drain of the CRC, and we need you as our representatives to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Mrs. Turley. Good morning.
Hi, thank you, Stephanie Turley. I have a disclaimer. My husband is on the Vancouver City Council. Mayor Levitt will turn over if he was in the grade.
We in Washougal will not hold that against you.
Oh, thank you very much. I have a couple of remarks that I would make, and with all due respect to you, sir, it is not a requirement to have light rail as part of the I-5 bridge. Please. They are after a high speed or high capacity portion that could be satisfied by a bus. And Patty Murray, Senator Murray, came and said that. She is absolutely wrong. We need to get it straight, folks, okay? Don't say that anymore. I'm older than you. Okay, the other thing is that if you look at Portland, if light rail is so successful, look at Portland. The congestion in Portland is incredible. People are not riding light rail the way they want them to. You go and check that during the day and you would see it is absolutely amazing how empty their light rail transportation is and how crowded their freeways are. So they are not a guiding light to us over here. The other thing that I would like to say is I think in this entire process, one really, really, really important thing is being overlooked in Clark County, and that is that the citizens are not getting a vote on this issue. I think that we should have a vote county-wide. It affects everyone in the county, not just Vancouver, not Hazeldale, anything. It's the entire county. And we need to have a vote up or down to inform our elected representatives where we are. Not about the gas tax, not about fees, about whether we want light rail or not. And it should be stated that way. Do you want light rail? Yes or no. It's very simple. And I think once the people have all the facts and everything comes out, Tiffany Couch has prepared report after report showing the blatant corruption that is going on this project. And yet elected representatives have chosen to turn their heads and not even look at it. The Colombian won't print it. The Oregonian won't print it. So a lot of the people aren't even aware. How unfair can that be? That is bias, whether you like it or not. And what I'm saying is it's time for the people to have a say in this. And I think that it should be brought forward from all the cities and from the county, and put it on a ballot and let people vote. Then you know. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll keep Sure.
Older than you, and I agree.
Not much.
Okay, we're going to turn to council for a few minutes, just to see if there are any comments council members would like to make before we break.
Give me the room back now. Okay, I sure appreciate the professionals and the experts that have come and shared with us today. I've spent time trying to document things that were stated on the internet, and you just all wrapped it up for me, and it's wonderful. But here's another really wise person that's an expert, the Oregon State Treasurer. Now, I think he must know budgets and finances pretty well if he's a treasurer. And just 2 days ago in the Oregonian, he had quite the article and a lot of quotes from him. So these are a couple of his quotes. The project costs have not been nailed down. There are a lot of question marks, including whether the federal funds will materialize. We're concerned about the governance model if the tolls don't pan out. The Coast Guard hasn't signed off on the height yet, so we don't know what revisions will be necessary. When it comes to doing our job, so that if we issue bonds, we certainly have the bondholders, I'm going to say that again, so that if we issue bonds, we have certainty that the bondholders will be paid back and that the taxpayers won't be at risk. That requires a deeper analysis than what the legislative process prescribes. So a couple of comments about that. I feel strongly about that comment because I represent the taxpayers and my votes represent you. And my concern is, will you be at risk? The Oregon State Treasurer feels that at this stage of the game, taxpayers are at risk. That's a quote 2 days ago. And then the second comment is that the legislative process needs a deeper analysis. He's saying that you can vote all you want, but if you can't get the treasurer to be able to figure out how to work it out, all the talking in the world won't do it. We can't pay for it. So I thought those were two really interesting comments. A couple of other thoughts. Federal funding is not guaranteed. We've already concluded with that today. It's interesting how that the CRC representatives state things as though they're fact, but we are told over and over and over again. Our own senator just said it, and the state of Oregon state treasurer just said it, that there is no guarantee yet on the federal funding. It's not one of those things, if you build it, they will come. We can't go by what Hollywood says. We got to go by the facts. What else? The New Start's federal funding of $800 million is not guaranteed. Their CRC is hoping for 80 to 90%, but according to, who was the other gentleman that was at the presentation the other night? Cartwright, said that only 50% is normally paid by the feds. Now, if the feds don't come up with $150 million and we start building this project, guess who gets to pay the difference? State and local. And so that, again, is back to my responsibility. Washougalites, you and me, will get to make up the difference of what the feds can't pay for us or choose not to pay for us. Thing is, we're going to start building this before we have any commitments from the feds. That is so backwards, the cart before the horse. Now I'm going to tell a personal story. You just heard from Bob. That's my husband over there. He's just been transferred to Tigard. He was working right here in Vancouver, and now he's driving to Tigard every morning and every afternoon. So he loses that great benefit that we don't have to pay state income tax over here, and he gets to pay Oregon state income tax. He's going to spend about 3 times more on gas, which is, what, $3.50, $3.75 a gallon. He could possibly have to pay tolls on the 205, which, what does that do? That's going to take about $1 an hour out of his paycheck. So our family just took another major hit in our budget. Also, 2% of our society can ride light rail over a bridge that services our community beautifully already with express buses. So our family is against this. And I've seen that our constituents have voted against it last November. And I agree, Mrs. Turley, that let's do it again. Let's get that wording on the ballot clarified so people really know what we're asking. Should we vote yes or no on light rail? Because that's what's driving the cost of this bridge up. I was quoted in the newspaper because of my position at CTRAN that I'm against Columbia River crossing. And my comment at the CTRAN board to clarify that was, I'm not against crossing the river. I'm against paying all of those fees so that we can have fixed light rail that will service 2%, that's what is proven right now, 2% of our community, when the rest of us will suffer enormously because of it. Especially Bob Freeman, who's now driving 1 hour and 10 minutes to get home from his job in the evening. Yeah, I am for crossing that river smoothly, quickly, and cheaper than we ever have in the past. So thank you.
Don't ever give a lawyer a chance to speak, but...
Can I have that microphone back?
As I said earlier, I'm focused on the 205 issue here, and that's a number of things. And Commissioner Medor brought up these tolling levels on 520. And with a prepaid pass, a 2-axle vehicle, just a standard car, $768 to cross the bridge once. Is that collected both ways? Round trip. Round trip. Okay. People are going to be diverting, even if they don't toll 205, they're going to be diverting over to 205. And I read a figure somewhere that would be, they expected a 14% increase in traffic on 205. I think it'll be higher than that. I don't think that's. I mean, if I work in downtown Vancouver and if I wanted to go over to Jansen Beach for lunch, I would seriously consider taking 205 rather than paying $7.68 to do that. So that's my other concern is even if they don't toll 205, there's going to be a huge increase in traffic. As for light rail, as I said, I'm skeptical about light rail, but it's something that you know has an impact generally on the city, and I don't know that the city should take a position on that particular issue. I will point out, though, that our own constituents in the CTRAN measure last fall voted 58% against the CTRAN measure to finance light rail. And in my closing argument, did Mr. Briggs leave? I just wanted to let him know that his ability to come here is not a privilege, it's a right.
Anyone else from council?
Just briefly, I wanted to thank the mayor for pulling all this together and for running it today, especially for his flexibility on the format. And I wanted to thank everybody that came here to do a presentation today and everybody that came to speak. We organized this to get views from the community, and I appreciate your taking the time to give us those.
I would echo that as well before we break. We didn't do too bad. We're only 25 minutes, 30 minutes behind schedule. So as I noted at the start, we're intending to do 4 of these a year, likely on Saturdays is the current plan, so that we've got some additional times outside of just Monday nights for folks to be able to comment in on issues. Our intent right now is to try and come up with a compelling topic for each one of those, so that we at least have something to talk about, even if nobody else wants to talk to us after we get done with that, but then to go into not only to get your own views on some of those things that we'll chat and communicate about, but then open the floor for just general comments, general questions of council and the staff that we have there. And hopefully, just like today, those will be helpful as well. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to the staff for being here on such a sunny Saturday as well. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Well, thank you guys for coming in on a Saturday.